Welcome everyone to another episode, our second episode of Life Lessons. And now we're going to take a deep dive into a day in the life at the Central Florida Zoo. You know, now with the pandemic occurring, with attractions kind of running around in full survival mode, we see it in Orange County, Osceola, and Seminole. Let's discuss some of the strategies, what have been the changes. And there's no one better to discuss it with the leader. And I'm sure Dino Ferry of the zoo wouldn't mind me saying that by any means. Stephanie Williams with the Central Florida Zoo. Stephanie, please give us a description of how the zoo's been running.
Sure. So it's definitely been an interesting time. Back in March, we closed. We shut down to the public to help mitigate the spread of coronavirus, and we were able to reopen back in May. And during that time, we had a lot of things going on still here at the zoo. So while we were closed to the public, the animals still needed to be fed, and diets still needed to be prepped, and the facilities still needed to be cared for. And so we did have staff working every day just to maintain the facilities, maintain the care and the well-being of the animals, and that was really important. At the same time, the leadership team was, trying to adjust to this new life without the public. And so how are we going to operate our business without the front gate revenue coming in, switching over grants to emergency operations, and how long is that going to sustain the zoo? How long can we go with not knowing if we're going to be able to reopen or not? And so working, every day together, trying to figure that out, definitely stressful, but, we came together as a team to do that. And back in May, we were able to reopen. So we opened to phase one, and we started with one-way pass. We started making sure we adjusted our hours. So we decided, instead of just reopening 9 to 5 as we had prior to March, we were going to open 9 to 3, which allowed for enhanced cleaning at the end of the day. So while we knew the public was coming in, we would still be doing our hourly cleaning, disinfecting. We have our hand sanitizer stations open. We had one-way pass. We did time ticketing, so we knew exactly how many people were coming in. We limited the capacity while we opened in that phase one. And then as we approached phase two, we were able to increase capacity. We no longer had the one-way pass. We figured at this point we can allow folks to navigate their own way throughout the zoo while maintaining social distancing. It was during phase two that we implemented our mask policy. We thought that was the responsible thing to do given the time and the increase of cases within the region, really. And so we did a mask policy based on our age and our ticket prices. And so with Seminole County, the mask policy at the time, there wasn't a mandate or an order for businesses. And so we just implemented one ourselves. And so we did 13 and up. So that's how we kind of worked with the mask policy. So it is 13 and older still today, that you have to wear a mask while you're on property here at the zoo. Anyone under the age of 13, it is optional unless you're doing a specific program, event, behind the scenes experience, like a giraffe feeding, if you're doing a rhino encounter, if you're doing an education program, then anyone 2 and up must wear a mask. And so we're now into phase three. As of November 1st, we no longer have time ticketing. We never really reached our capacity for guests coming in on a daily basis. So we figured at this time it's good to do away with the time ticketing. You can still go online, buy your ticket in advance, which helps not waiting in line here at the zoo. But you can come in anytime you want between the hours of 9 and 3. If the weather's bad, you decide not to go for that day, you can use your ticket on another day. So it's good for a year. So that's been very helpful. and we haven't, as of that started yesterday. So so far, no, we've had some ticketing issues, but that's, technology part of it. But we've been able to resume most of our activities. So the aerial adventure course is back open. That's Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Our rhino encounters were back open, giraffe feedings. You can feed the animals in the barnyard. And all of our education programs have started back again. And so we've been fortunate to be able to host programs on site, as well as now start to be able to travel off site into the schools and community.
So I know the Central Florida Zoo is just famous for how close you can get to a variety of animals, the animal encounters, the interactions. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Have you seen any difference in the animal behavior due to the pandemic, since the pandemic? I know that animals, can sense some of our feelings and stress and emotions. Is that something that you're seeing at the zoo as well? Are you seeing something different from the animals?
So it was interesting when we closed. And so you went from literally Saturday packed right before spring break, full of people, to go to Sunday closed. And so then you started no people. And so we did start to see the animals, if a staff member walked by, if you were to walk by a habitat, that the animals were more engaged with you as a person. It's like, whoa, okay, wait, there's only one or two people coming around, or it's just the staff that is usually, that works with that animal. It's not the noise level, if you want to call it that, just people talking and you could hear kids playing, that was absent. So that was pretty unusual for, I think, the staff as well as the animals. So we did see a little bit of a change in the animal behavior, just that there was no people. And so whoever did walk by, they seemed to want to come up close and be more interactive in terms of like, what are you doing? Why are you here? And then as we opened up, it was slower because we did go from phase one. It's not like we just opened the doors and thousands of people flooded in. It was a gradual, we're still increasing our attendance, weekend to weekend, day by day. And so the noise levels coming back, that typical day feeling, we're just now starting to kind of feel again. It's unusual. We just came off our Zubu weekend, and it felt like we were all saying like, oh my gosh, it felt somewhat like back to what it used to feel like with the attendance and the people and the noise and things like that.
And, and, and so I know that we had our camera out. Karen Applin did a fantastic job with you yesterday. Could you walk us through what that day was like as you took some of our UCF students around and gave them a hands-on experience of what it feels like to be in the zoo?
Yeah, so it was great. We started up front with our carousel, and you walk through, and they got to see the aerial adventure courses. And we talked a little bit about the 3 different courses that we have. So we have our children's course, our upland course, and then our rainforest course. And we talked, I explained a little bit about why we are opening that on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays because of attendance. We just had to modify when everything is open. So they're excited. They seem to want to come back and try that out. And then we went into the zoo and we got to talk about the different, species that we have and that we care for here at the zoo. They got a peek at the splash ground. Yesterday was a bit cold, so nobody was in the water yesterday. But on a good hot day, you'll see it full of kids running around. We were able to travel out to our bear habitat. We talked about the partnership with Seminole County and the bear education that we're trying to do with residents throughout Central Florida, with living with wildlife here in Florida. And they got a sneak peek at seeing the bears come out of their back house. So they were patient and waited for our staff to finish doing the checks of the enclosure and the habitat, making sure it was safe and all the food was put out for the bears. And then they got to watch the bears come out and notice the different behaviors between the bears. So the male likes to go exploring first, the female just kind of waits and hangs back, and then they flip flop. So then the male will sit back and the female will go explore. So it was kind of interesting to see that part. We got to take a look at some of our cats and primates and the rhino. And eventually we wound our way up into the barnyard area. So they got to explore what it's like to feed alpaca and a llama and some goats. And then we ended the day feeding the giraffe, which is always spectacular when you get to see these magnificent giants coming over you and eating out of your hand. So I think it was a great day. Lots of experiences that you can take part in.
Oh my God. And now I want to put Shannon on the spot and ask her, Shannon, you have some questions that some students love to talk about. So I'd love to hear those questions for Stephanie.
All right, Stephanie. So we're always talking about career journeys. How did you get your start? So how did you get to the zoo?
So I graduated, I went to the University of Florida and got my wildlife ecology and natural resource conservation degree. So long title there. But I knew I loved science. I knew I wanted to work with wildlife. And I also loved education. And so when I was graduating from the University of Florida, I was also working at the museum up in Gainesville. And I was working in their fish department, which doesn't sound very exciting, but it was. And I got to do some education with the website there and just kind of I started looping that in. So educating science, animals, okay, I'm building what I think I want, to do going forward. And I ended up coming back to Orlando and going to UCF and getting my master's in science education. And while I was doing my classes, a part-time position opened up at the zoo to be an educator. So I was working at the zoo part-time, doing my schooling at UCF, and it just started, the train just kept going. And so I was able to be an educator here at the zoo. I ended up applying for our volunteer coordinator position, overseeing the volunteers. So I started doing that full time. When I graduated UCF, I moved into the education manager role here, and then eventually into the director role of the education department. And then I had a great opportunity to do my doctorate from the University of Southern California, USC in California. And so I got my doctorate in organizational change and leadership. And so that was putting me kind of on the pathway of more into the leadership role and the zoo director role that I'm in now, which I've been doing for about 2 years now. So it's been a winding journey, and I love now the operation. So it started with education, it started with science, animals, and now to me it's the behind the scenes of what happens to make the zoo run. It's how do we build things in the facility? How do we get funding to make everything possible? Not only from working with the guests, but also the staff. It's everything, the community. So it's that behind the scenes moments that I love so much. What does it take to make the zoo function?
That is wonderful. I see your interest, and I also see some opportunities that came to you via your interest, your volunteering. Now they have really led you into the spot that into the position you're in now. That is fabulous. Now, I would also like to know, what are some characteristics and traits that you believe that you have that help you succeed in your job?
I think being patient, flexible, is very key. Knowing that you're going to work with so many different people with so many different personalities, you have to be able to manage working with individuals that are looking at, everybody might be looking at the same image or the same project, but you have different lenses on. You're thinking about it from different perspectives. And so how do you navigate that? How do you take it from one person's perspective and make it a team perspective, and recognizing that there's strengths in everybody's views? And I think that comes from being flexible, patient, but also, I don't like to give up. I just want to keep going. And so to tell me no is like, no, that's not possible. Let's figure out a way to do things. So that's kind of for me.
Well, that's great, because as we've heard, many employers and people who have success in their jobs, those are very key elements that I hope our students pick up on: flexibility, patience, and not taking no, but how do we problem solve? How do we make it happen? So fabulous. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And Stephanie, before we sign off, I definitely want to extend my apologies. I did not know it was Dr. Stephanie Williams. Massive apology. For years now that we've known each other, and I have not said Dr. Stephanie Williams. I guarantee you that will be the only way I introduce you ever again. Massive apologies.
I leave it alone. The staff here give me a hard time about it too, but I'm proud of it. But it was something that it was a goal for me to get to that level. Education is a big part of who I am and my family, and so I made it a goal that this was something that I wanted to do. So.
Fabulous. Well, one more question, Dr. Williams. As you were talking about your staff, what are some of the positions that students can hold at the zoo?
So it's a great question, and one that we always like to talk about, because there's so many opportunities here. So when you think of a zoo, we think naturally the animals and caring for them. But what we talked about earlier is that there's a whole zoo to run. We do have to do marketing. We have to communicate with the public. We have to fundraise. We have our accounting department, finances. We have payroll, HR. Human resources is a big part of being here. Not to mention our frontline staff with our administration, our guest services, our public areas, because we have to be able to clean up the park and keep everything sanitized and disinfected. We have our facilities team that takes care of all of our maintenance, our horticulture team that's taking care of the gardens and the landscaping. And so you start to break down retail, food, concessions, it keeps going on. And so there's definitely, there's leadership positions, there's entry-level positions. We've had staff here that have worked starting in high school and have continued, on to be a keeper, to intern, to get into a director role. It's great. There's just so many opportunities that if you're interested, you might be interested in animals and wildlife, but you want to combine that with marketing and communications, or being out front talking to people every day, you can do that. This is the one place that is possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephanie, thank you so much again. I mean, you were absolutely fantastic for our first ever, this is historical, first ever day in the life episode here in Life Lessons. So we couldn't have asked for a better guest, the Central Florida Zoo, Dr. Stephanie Williams. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Sailing for me, when I first started sailing, I actually fell asleep a lot because it was so soothing to the soul and so relaxing that it was just like perfection. I'm Captain DJ, owner and founder of Sail, and we're located on Lake Monroe. I started this business to provide an opportunity for people to sail here in Central Florida. Sail, where you learn to sail.